Hey guys, welcome back to season 2 of To Watch Charade. What?
Draco's just taking a shit.
Doing
We've christened it. I'm sure he'll come out and do his zoomies, but the good news is, hopefully that'll mean he's gonna do nothing but take a nap for the rest of the time.
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know what this is, because we are kind of going into new territory with the show, being only on YouTube and kind of treating the whole first season as lost media. So if you aren't familiar with us already, hi, I'm Connor,
I'm Erica.
and we are dating each other. We live together. I am a former film student. Erica is a former art history student. And we like to watch movies and read books. And that's what this podcast is usually.
Mm-hmm.
Every month, me and Erica are going to read a book and then discuss the film/miniseries adaptation, because we want to start doing miniseries eventually down the line as well, I think.
Yeah, we'll see where this takes us this season.
And then every 2 weeks, you will get either one of those or a kind of off the books, could be a lot of other things episode, could be commentary, could be just a random discussion, could be Oscars talk.
Could be.
Basically, it's the Wild West. So this first episode back in season 2, the first episode that will ever exist on this YouTube channel, we are talking about Paul Tremblay's Cabin at the End of the World and the adaptation Knock at the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. This is going to be a very spoiler-filled podcast.
The book follows a family with two fathers and their daughter Wen. They are on vacation at a cabin in New Hampshire, and all of a sudden there are 4 intruders that break into their home and tell them that they are there to prevent the apocalypse. And in order to do so, the family must sacrifice one of their own. It was published in 2019, and it won the Bram Stoker Award for that year, for the novel of 2019. And this was actually optioned for a movie by Film Nation before it was released. It was optioned in 2017, 2 years before it was ever put out.
It is something that is rife for adaptation. Like, there was just a lot of weight here. And as a premise, honestly, this would work even better on a stage, I think, even maybe. It's a one location kind of thing. It's a very interesting kind of dynamics at play. My general thoughts in the book is I really do enjoy the text. I think this is my first Tremblay book I've read. I think Tremblay's dialogue mostly pretty stilted. Lesser extent with Wynne, because I think he does write her very well. Some of the adults do have the semblance to talk like robots ever so often. And it's just very like blunt to the point articulations. There's not much like human error or nuance in some of the dialogue. But as a story and like a narrative, I think it's actually very strong. And I think I really like the themes it is playing with like, love versus fear and choice and the lack of it. Yeah, I like the book a lot. What are your general thoughts?
I think you like it better than I do. When I read this, I had read Head Full of Ghosts, which is one of my favorite horror books. Some people might not call it horror, but it's one of my favorites. And I'd also read his short story collection, Growing Things. This is my 3rd time around with Paul Tremblay, and it wasn't my favorite. For me personally, I liked the premise more than the execution. I think that it's too long. I think this would have been a very strong novella. I do like the fact that we get an ambiguous ending. I like Paul's version of the story better than M. Night's. I think for someone that wants to start out with him, it would be a good place to start. I just don't love the story as a whole. I expected it to have a lot more tension, and that's not really what this is.
I get that for sure. There's just big stretches where nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And this is our first big spoiler of the text, but after they kill Redmond/O'Bannon, they just calm down and just make dinner and sweep up the broken glass. And that's meant to be an extreme juxtaposition in that moment with Eric and Andrew reacting to that and how casual the 4 of them are. But when you're reading the book, it's not really ironic as he intended, I think. I think it is more as like, oh, okay, so I can just take a deep breath for however many pages.
Well, I think he does that to kind of show that these are not people that are aiming to scare this family.
No.
The people that have come into their life are trying to get them to make a sacrifice for the greater good of humanity. It's something that these 4 people really believe in, and that they need to convince these 2 grown men that they need to sacrifice one of them or their daughter in order to save the entire world. And they're not really excited about the idea that they have to do this either. It's not something they want to be doing, and I think that's expressed greater in the movie than it is in the book. So I think we need to just dive into this fully and discuss the plot, because I feel like we're talking around it
Yeah.
quite a bit here.
So basically, just going full into the plot, we start the book from Wen's point of view, which I have my first one of my notes.
Well, to be fair, we spend a decent amount of the book in Wen's point of view.
Yeah. But you begin the book in Wen's point of view as she's just sitting out catching grasshoppers. And what I love about the book, immediately right away, is Wen, obviously she's still a kid, so she's written like a child, but you can tell there is an actual, like, an intelligence behind Wen that does not feel like an adult man is writing it. She's very intelligent for her age, but it never stretches the boundaries of, like, oh, okay, this is like I don't know how old Tremblay was, but like 40-year-old man, like, writing a 10-year-old girl.
He's written from the perspective of young girls before. His entire novel of Head Full of Ghosts is mainly told through a young girl's experience of her sister being, quote-unquote, possessed. He is also a high school teacher.
I think any career where you're working a lot with a particular group of people, mainly in that case, like children, you do kind of develop more of an understanding of like how their minds work and how they actually speak and how they think and how they act.
Yeah.
But I was actually very impressed by just the quality of writing there and how deeply intelligent Wen is right out of the gate. And her own thoughts she has that some people would have an issue with the fact that she does have two dads.
Yeah. After the intruders successfully intrude upon the house, the cabin that this family has rented, they have a bit of an incident where Eric ends up getting a concussion. He hits his head pretty hard against the floor, and they're subsequently tied up. They issue them the proposal of what they're there to do, them being there to stop the apocalypse, forcing them to make the decision that one of the three of them will have to be killed, and they will have to be the ones to kill them. And if they are unable to make that decision, there will be 3 different wraths, let's say, released upon humanity. And if we get through all 3 of them, the world will end, and these 3 people will be left to walk the face of the earth alone.
And the 3 are...
Essentially, it is a great flood, a plague, and then the sky will start to fall. And
God's hand will come down and scorch the earth.
yes,
I believe it is, yeah.
Yes.
They refuse to make the first choice. And as a result of them not making a choice to kill one of them, one of the 4 of the group that came in has to be sacrificed in their stead. And the first to go is Redmond, who they take turns bashing in his head with the tools they brought.
They're a little bit different in the book than they are in the movie, but they're all things that have been very makeshifted together, like just a stick with a couple knives, a butcher's knife on the end, or a shovel that's kind of been contorted in a way to be more efficient at stabbing someone, that kind of thing. Other than the consequence of humanity having to be plagued with some sort of atrocity, they also kill one of each other. And so we eventually get down and see all those atrocities happen, which gets into the whole, do you or don't you believe what these intruders are telling you?
There's always enough doubt where you could believe that they knew this ahead of time. These people are delusional, that there is no actual force compelling them to do this stuff. I really, that's one of my favorite things about the book, is that doubt it sows. Because obviously, they're correct. The world does flood in that moment. But Andrew points out, those tidal waves, their first one happened hours ago.
Yeah, 4 hours before they even got there.
And they kept checking their watches, and they knew exactly, roughly, what time a wave would hit. The plague, it was a pre-recorded TV program of the pandemic spreading, and Andrew had heard about cases for months. And then the planes, they can't explain. There's no way to explain that. But there's little things that sow doubt. And one of the big ones, the Rory O'Bannon / Redmond thing, that one of them actually is a known homophobe that has indeed assaulted one of the people in the cabin already. And that's what sows the seeds of doubt within not just Andrew and Eric and Wen, but also the 4 intruders. They're like, well, didn't he pick out this cabin? Isn't he the first one to see this? And we see immediately the fissures divide within their community of them starting to doubt everything. And I just love that part of the book, as we establish the doubt, obviously, that these stuff could be planned. And also, was one of them just playing along and feeding this information just to further, attack the person he feels that got him in trouble?
Yes. The reason these four are all together is they met on a forum.
Yes, they met on the message board.
Basically, a Reddit kind of situation where I think a lot of people were having these shared visions. They had not met personally before this. They met that morning.
We have that doubt. But I also think it's really interesting that Tremblay plays with themes of belief and religion as well.
Well, there's really, if you're having these kinds of visions and there is an element of biblical reference to them with a great flood and with a plague, that would result in someone believing that it is God setting them on this mission.
I do like that Eric, as a Catholic, even though he's kind of distanced from the church, when that religious element does come in addition to his hallucination he has in the light due to his concussion, or are we led to believe that it wasn't actually a hallucination? Was there actually a figure in the light that was present when they killed Redmond? He starts to believe kind of the religious rhetoric of it all. And Andrew, who is he a human rights attorney in the book? Do they?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I think he is some sort of lawyer.
But he's somebody who, even being a lawyer, you deal with the worst kind of people, and you yourself have been attacked in public just for being who you are.
Well, and his parents don't really accept him either for who he is. His
parents don't accept him. He's been countered endlessly with the worst of humanity and doesn't have that grounding in religion. And at no point does Andrew even begin to believe any of this. Eric is the only one who does really kind of agree, and mainly only because of, one, he is concussed, and two, he does have that loose grounding in religion, and he still has belief and hope in people around him, which Andrew just doesn't have anymore. And I do like that Tremblay is playing with that compassion and faith and belief playing into the themes of this book. I compared this, obviously this book was not written by M. Night Shyamalan, but in a comparison to another M. Night Shyamalan project that I watched recently, like Lady in the Water, which is a movie I actually really enjoy. People do not like Lady in the Water. That's the beginning of the end of people's love affair with Shyamalan. But I wrote here in my notes, like Lady in the Water, this deals with the crisis of belief, being too educated or too rational to believe in things that are larger than yourself, which I just thought was a really interesting connection to these two very different texts. And I liked about the book is obviously it gives both sides the argument, but at the same time, the text could very easily be like, yeah, I'm giving you both sides, but it really is this.
Yeah.
And the book never does that. The book does strengthen both sides.
Yeah.
That doubt does feed directly into the ending.
Yes.
Which I think is incredibly strong.
Yes.
Just a refresher. You should have hopefully read the book if you're listening to this. But
yes.
At the end of the book.
Well, let's clarify. There's one very tragic event that happens in the book.
Yeah.
Which is Wen's death.
Mm-hmm.
It is an accidental death. Leonard and Andrew are fighting over the gun. Leonard squeezes Andrew's hand, which causes the trigger to go off, and we find out that Wen died. And one would maybe hope or think that this would then stop the end of the world decision from having to happen because they have lost someone from their family. But of course, that's not how this works because it was an accident.
Yeah.
They did not purposefully sacrifice her.
One of the many points of the book I got teary-eyed is what kind of God would not allow this little girl's life be good enough?
Yeah.
It's just, oh my gosh. It's so good. With Wen dying, they're broken people. They've broken both physically and mentally, both of them, with Eric being heavily concussed, Andrew's knee being like jelly because Sabrina hitting it with the hammer.
Yes. I think it's fair to say their lives are fundamentally changed. By the end of the book, all of the intruders have died. Leonard was killed, Sabrina ended up taking her own life, and they are left out where the intruders first entered into their lives, and they have a gun, the gun in which Sabrina used to end her life. Eric really wants to believe them and wants Andrew to sacrifice him to save the world because he truly believes in what's been going on.
He started with faith. He's the one who still has that faith. And that's why he says to Andrew, just kill him anyway. And they repeat that mantra they've had a few times over the book, which they're going to do it together. in that moment, which I like, is they're not letting the uncertainty or the fear impact their decision. It is love. They're choosing to, whatever happens, whether or not the world ends, whether they just, die together in each other's arms, just from the depth of their injuries in those woods, they're going to do it together, no matter what happens, which I think is a very affecting way to end that book and a very interesting conclusion to the themes it tries to present.
There are some fun facts I would like to go over about the book. If you ever pick up one of his books, I recommend picking up the Morrow editions of them. They're the ones that have the postscript in them. Quite a few, you'll find sometimes books have that little PS, a yellow PS thing on the corner of them, which basically means that the author has included some sort of extra material at the end of the book. In both novels that I've read from him, he's included some really good notes, like chapter by chapter notes on his thought process and his intention behind the novel. First fun fact I have is that Leonard was named after Lenny from Of Mice and Men, which I think fits him really well because he's a very large guy. The image of who we get as Leonard in the book and who Leonard is in the movie is a little bit different.
Yeah, in the book, Leonard is like 23 years old.
Yes, he's very young. He's not very old at all.
Versus Dave Bautista, who is 54.
But either way, like something that one really reiterates to the reader is that he's a very large guy. Mm-hmm. He's very tall. But he's also very gentle, which is the thing about with Lenny too, is, he's big, but he's gentle. The 4 intruders wear very similar shirts. One says that they're all the same shirts, just in 4 different colors. And those are meant to represent the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which they all ride on different colored horses. But the other part is that yellow is a marker of death for Paul in this book. Every character that subsequently dies interacts with yellow in some capacity, and I think all of them actually have to do with a yellow lamp that is in the cabin. Redmond knocks over the yellow lamp. Adrian and Wen both try to turn on the yellow lamp at some point in the book. Leonard throws rope that knocks the yellow lamp over, and Sabrina's weapon also knocks the yellow lamp over.
So we're going to shift perspective to the motion picture now, entitled Knock the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, shot by Academy Award nominee Jaron Blaschke. This movie is shot on film, and it actually uses lenses that were appropriate for the time they wanted to portray. And obviously this movie does not take place in the 90s. He very much wanted this movie to feel like a 90s thriller. And as a result of wanting to achieve that goal, he shot the movie with 90s lenses, and he actually shot on 35mm. Since he shoots with anamorphic lenses, the focus is much more intense. One thing we'll talk about, this is like the last little bit of technical stuff I'll talk about. There's a long-standing thing with M. Night Shyamalan's career that people often really don't like the choices he makes. And people associate with M. Night Shyamalan always committing to the bit, per se, as there's a line in the movie Signs with Joaquin Phoenix's character when he's sitting in an office talking to somebody, and they ask him why he had like the most strikeouts in his baseball league. And he says, it felt wrong not to swing. Yeah. Which that is Shyamalan's thing entirely.
Yeah.
He will do anything and everything, and I love that about him. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, I'm gonna just say it right for the record. M. Night Shyamalan, good director.
Here's the thing, there's some movies that he's done that, granted, I've not seen, but I have no interest in seeing them. The Last Airbender, or The Happening. But Signs is great. The Village is great. Mm-hmm. This is great.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3.5, but I still think it's a very good movie. I think people get very annoyed with the classic M. Night Shyamalan things he does. Yeah. With putting himself in the movie in some capacity, which I think is just cheeky and fun. I think it's great. Yeah. The day that he doesn't put himself in one of his movies, I'm honestly going to be sad about it. Mm-hmm. Which I read an interview with him today, and apparently he has a lot coming.
The thing with M. Night Shyamalan, he's like a lot of these directors where his movies are not that expensive. Yeah. In the grand scheme of thing. They make money. And now that he is kind of getting more cultural cachet again, ever since The Visit, Universal's like, why the heck not?
I was in the theater yesterday, and I was like, M. Night Shyamalan's back, baby.
He is back.
But then I forgot that he did Old, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
Old's a good movie.
I didn't enjoy Old. I did not
Yeah.
enjoy Old that much. I think it's fine.
We'll go on a little M. Night Shyamalan diatribe here. But obviously, there are the classics.
Signs is number 1.
Well, I'm talking about the world, not just us.
Oh.
I also agree Signs is number 1. It's my favorite M. Night
Yeah.
movie. He comes onto the scene with Sixth Sense after his first 2 features that no one really knows what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Gets proclaimed as like the next Spielberg. Like, this guy is going places. Follows it up with Unbreakable. People are like, it's good. It's no Sixth Sense, but it's a good
Yeah.
movie. And then you are...
Signs is so good. It's so
great.
good. Yeah.
But culturally, audience-wise, you are starting to see the cracks. His next movie, The Village, the cracks start to spread. And then
you get The Lady in the Water.
yes.
And then you get The Happening. And then you get The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
And then you get After Earth. He does have 4 movies that are...
He has 4 in a row that people think are really stinky.
Yes.
Here's the thing. I love The Village. I have issues with The Village in terms of Adrian Brody's character, but I really do love The Village.
Mm-hmm.
Then I just watched Lady in the Water, like I said. Good movie. I get why people don't like it. I understand that. But talking about the whole, like, taking a swing mentality, that movie, even 15 years later, over 15 years later, still hits. And there's so much interesting stuff he's doing with that movie.
Yeah.
And so much deep emotionality he's covering with Paul Giamatti's character and the world of that apartment complex. Not to mention the incredible visuals and creature design with the scrunts. Like,
Yeah.
oh, great. You watched a little bit of it with me at the end.
I did enjoy... here's the thing. Looking at what I saw, I don't think it would have been a movie for me. I think it's a movie for Connor.
Yes.
That's great. That being said, I did really enjoy the animals that we got in that movie. I did think they were very cool.
And then following Lady in the Water, you do have The Happening.
Maybe the worst?
Yeah, not to be
That
controversial.
or The Last Airbender.
I hear something. I've seen 10 minutes of Last Airbender and I turned it off. I do want to watch it in reality and finish it and complete it because I do want to get through all of Shyamalan, especially because I'm majority of the way there.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Happening is a misstep. I'm not going to try to fight anybody with that. That's not a great movie. I've not seen Last Airbender, like I mentioned. Immediately going into After Earth is after that.
I think so. Those might be switched around.
I've not seen After Earth. I need to. But then you go to The Visit, movie I also haven't seen. But the thing
You've not seen The Visit?
I have not.
I thought you had.
No.
Oh, my bad.
The Visit, I've heard nothing but great things about it, though.
The Visit. Here's the thing with The Visit that I think is why people say M. Night's back. The Visit is something that is relatable to a mainstream audience. It is a very classic horror movie of that time. That paired with Split, there is some conversation about mental illness that people don't appreciate about M. Night Shyamalan.
Which I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to go straight into Split, which is, I feel like, where he actually is back. Because I acknowledge the problems inherent in Split, and that is actually a whole different podcast in itself about M. Night Shyamalan's representation of mental health.
Well, I think when you get into Split and the topic of DID, it's a bigger conversation broadly, and I don't think it's entirely should be weighed upon by Split and by M. Night's portrayal of it. It's something historically that's not portrayed well in movies.
It's something that has always been used for horror.
Yeah,
and
it's not. I'm not sure there's any really good
DID representation.
Yes, yeah. If there is, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, we could do a whole different podcast on that.
Yeah.
With which we'll skip over Glass because I think that's just kind of, it's a direct continuation of Split in general. Yes, but we didn't even talk about Unbreakable, a movie I haven't seen. I've heard it's also very good. But moving forward with that, and then going back to mental health stuff, you do have the thing in Old. Yeah. With Rufus Sewell's character, I think it's the guy's name, and how he's portrayed as like schizophrenic, and how that just is.
It's a device that seems to be commonly used by M. Night.
Well, not just M. Night. It's with horror directors in general from the beginning of time.
Yes, but I would argue there's
you should know better now.
Quite a bit that he's done in his movies.
Yes.
And we don't need to go back to Adrian Brody and The Village.
Yeah, that's a whole different can of worms too. And now that catches us back up to Knock at the Cabin. Which is the thing, like I said, M. Night, great director.
Right.
When he hits, he hits. Yeah. When the swing connects with the ball, it's pretty sick. But going back to this movie, and I will probably trim down that M. Night tangent at least a little bit. Obviously, this is shot like a 90s thriller. They're using lenses from the 90s. It's anamorphic. All great stuff. I love his use of close-ups, which is something he has
Yes.
been playing with more recently in his filmography,
There's a lot of close-ups in this.
along with just the camera motion.
Mm-hmm.
This thing, in Old, it's insane how much he moves that camera. And here it's a little more restrained because he's on in a closed space as opposed to an entire beach.
Right.
But there's still a lot of movement he's doing.
Yeah.
The beginning, when it's just Leonard and Wynn, how the camera, it's just getting closer and closer and closer till their faces.
Yes.
Until it pulls all the way out to reveal the last three.
Yeah.
Which I think is just an incredible bit. And
yeah, I wanted to touch on that a little bit because it's something that I really enjoy about how the movie was shot. I think those close-ups are really effective in creating not only a claustrophobic atmosphere, because for most of it we are stuck inside this, it really feels like a one-room cabin.
Yeah.
You know, with these characters. And I was just reading an interview and him talking about how his intention kind of going with it was thinking about how you're really trying to decipher from these people whether or not they are being honest with you and whether they're telling the truth, what's really going on. And, you know, kind of really just like focusing in and trying to read their faces to see, are they lying? Are they being honest with me?
Yeah. Do yourself as an audience believe them, let alone, you know, the people inside the cabin themselves.
Right. I think, well, I mean, especially I think the part with like Leonard and Wen, you're both like just really trying to like see into that other person to figure out what is going on. And I think too, at the end, like we get some wide shots with Andrew and Eric, and it's very relieving when you do. It feels a little bit like a breath of fresh air. I think that paired with the rain that's happening at the same time, it does feel like we can breathe.
We've went on and on about how M. Night was a really good choice for this, and he is a master of suspense. Obviously, the guy who cut his teeth making Sixth Sense, people would argue one of the greater horror films of all time. When I was finished reading the book, I even said to Erica, like, oh, M. Night's the perfect choice for this material. And I think he was. I just forgot about one of my issues with M. Night Shyamalan as a director overall. With the exception of Mr. Glass's arms or the rusty blade in Old and the broken bones in Old, Shyamalan does not really go for graphic violence.
Yeah. And this is an R-rated movie.
It is.
It's one of his few.
It's only his second.
When we heard that this was getting an R rating, and after reading the book, I think we both were for sure thinking that it was going to be for violence.
Here's just going back slightly a little bit. There's no reason we had to be rated R. Quite simply, no reason. I told Erica on the car ride home, the only thing the R rating did was just limit the audience. It just made it harder for 12-year-old kids to go see a movie they're going to sneak into anyway.
Well, maybe not 12-year-olds, but like
14-year-olds. 15,
16-year-old kids.
Yeah.
You know, because this is a movie that there's no reason that they can't see.
Yeah.
I don't think.
This movie is rated R because people say fuck a few times. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Part of what that makes the book so intriguing to me, on top of the crisis of faith, is just how gruesome this is and how much you were directly connected, involved in this violence. And you, especially with Eric, with the concussion, you live in that violence constantly. Mm-hmm. You feel the effects. Every time Andrew takes a step after his knee is hurt, like you feel it through his description. Since the violence is so toned down, you don't really have that fear and connection and terror that I think is inherent in the book.
There's a brutality that's almost shocking. They have a device of a plain white mask.
Yeah.
That they use whenever they sacrifice one of their own, which is meant to take away the identity of that person. I think, honestly, make them easier to kill.
For the audience, it's a metaphor for this is everyday people.
Right.
This is a faceless human being.
Yes, it's a metaphor for the fact that you are, you know, by not sacrificing one of your own, you are choosing to kill this individual, but this individual represents hundreds of thousands of people that will die because of the great wave that's going to come, mm-hmm. or the plague, etc.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and the last little bit of violence I'll talk about, when you watch Old, that is rated PG-13, but the violence he does in that it's incredibly gruesome and affecting. He can use violence a lot more effectively still in a PG-13 rating, which I just don't think the violence was effective here. It didn't need to be bloodier. It just needed to be better implemented and more effective, because he's shown he can do that with a PG-13 rating. But yeah, I think him being adverse to that does really affect the thematic elements of the movie. I think they do all kind of land softer because it doesn't have that kind of graphic heart to it, if that makes sense. So, Erica, you want to go more into the differences of the book now?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if we kind of talk about what is different between the book and the movie adaptation of it. Overall, the first probably half of this movie is extremely similar to the book. We mainly start to diverge from the novel post Redmond's death. We don't get a dinner scene, which I'm wondering if it's a deleted scene that will maybe be included in a physical release later, because we do see that the dinner table is set and they have eaten in general, and we don't have any conversations that night, which we do get in the book. Adrian is murdered quite a bit earlier in the movie than she is in the book. It is also included that she has a son in the movie, which I don't really know how I feel about that edition of it. It's very passive. It's not something that adds really any weight to the movie, in my opinion.
Well, it does result in something. We do have the later on moment where Andrew's like, oh, I'm supposed to believe Adrian has a son. And then at the end, when they open the duffel bag, we see she wasn't lying. It is the movie playing into the doubt element that is less apparent in the movie, but it is still a theme of the movie.
Leonard is the one that we are left with in the end. So Sabrina dies first. She's the penultimate death.
She kind of takes the spot that Adrian's death had in the book.
Yes. And one of the big differences, which I think I talked about earlier, is that we actually are able to confirm that Redmond was, in fact, Rory O'Bannon, the man that attacked Andrew in the bar that night. This I don't care for. Leaving him unconfirmed is so much more interesting than confirming that it was indeed him.
Which when he went for the wallet, I thought that was going to be the reveal.
That it wasn't him.
That it wasn't really O'Bannon.
Well, I didn't know if we were ever going to see it. My thought was that we were never going to see what the ID said.
Yeah.
And that we were going to watch his reaction to what was in the wallet. But we as an audience were never going to have it confirmed or denied.
Which would have been really sick. I do think them limiting the element of doubt. I told Erica last night, it's going to seem like I don't like this movie. I really like this movie. I think it's like really incredible, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. But I think thematically, it is not necessarily weaker than the book. It just focuses on very different things thematically. I don't think the adaptation is as strong as it could have been due to the kind of not the watering down, but the lessening of those themes.
This is probably the moment when the changes really start to affect the strength of the movie. There's one thing that I want to touch on that is not actually included in the movie. Eric discusses to Andrew in the movie that he believes he saw a figure above Redmond's body. I didn't want something big, but I had a vision in my head of what it was like in the book, and I wish it included that. Going along with that, as Eric suffers through his concussion, he starts hallucinating. Mm-hmm. And a big thing of that is flies. But the flies kind of lead him to do certain things in the book that we don't get in the movie. In the movie, his concussion is pretty minimal. It's not necessarily minimal. We don't get a lot of representation of that concussion.
There's quite literally a bit where he rips off the bandages and literally he does not act like he is concussed for the rest of the movie.
It's possible that in the movie he had a more minor concussion than he had in the book.
I wouldn't fight you on that if the nurse character didn't say he is severely concussed.
That's true. Yeah, you got me there.
It's one of those things that every time someone adapts a story, even a director just adapting an original screenplay, every person is interested and less interested in different elements of that story. Yeah, he just wasn't interested in the element. But since we read the book, and that's so essential to Eric's portrayal, his point of view, I was really invested in the concussion.
Yeah. I just think that it would have been a very interesting element to add to the movie. I understand not wanting to do it. So yeah, getting back to kind of the ending of this movie and what makes it so different from the book after we see those shots of the planes, which an element that I think was added was Leonard quoting the news as it was going on.
Yeah, that's not in the book.
It's kind of like that last, like, oh shit, maybe these people are right. Maybe I should have listened this whole time. But after that happens is when we have Leonard's death out on the back porch of the cabin. Basically what happens is they tell Gwen to go into the treehouse that is on the property and to put her headphones on and to not come out until they go and get her. And Leonard ends his own life, and immediately the sky turns dark, which does happen in the book when Sabrina dies. The sky begins to turn dark, but in the movie we get just a ton of lightning scarring the earth, as the intruders predicted would happen. And it's at this point that we have Andrew and Eric go back inside the house, and Eric basically just comes out and is like very in belief of these intruders and is like I gotta go. You gotta kill me.
Yeah,
like this is happening. I believe them. He even calls back to them being literally the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I wrote down Redmond was a representation of malice. Sabrina is healing. Adrian nurturing, and Leonard is guidance. And we see the fact that Eric does end up dying. And there was a heartbreaking moment where Andrew crawls up to the treehouse, and Wen's sitting there, like curled up, huddled up with her headphones on, her iPod playing, and she asks, did Eric save all those people? I don't even know if Andrew says yes. I think he just like curls up next to her and starts bawling. And that's when I started bawling as well.
Yeah. I was getting misty-eyed during that scene, yeah.
Yes, I was a little surprised that you were not. But I was. Yeah. I was very sad at that point, which we see them come out of the treehouse, and we get a lot more shots of the lightning kind of scarring the earth and the lightning actually striking the cabin. And the cabin erupts into a fire with all of the bodies inside of it, which at first I was a little confused by. Now, looking back on it, I realize it was meant to be perceived as an act of God to absolve them from any crimes that they would have been faced with because they continued the world. After the cabin burns down, Wen and Andrew walk down the road that they came in on to the cabin, and they stumble across the truck that the intruders came in on and find all of their belongings inside the car, and are able to confirm their identities were all true as how they were told. And they drive to a local diner where they see all 3 plagues that the intruders talked about have now stopped.
Yeah.
The tsunamis have subsided. The plague has pretty much, like, the death
tolls are slowing down. It's been a whole hour since someone has died of the disease.
Yes, and all planes have been either grounded or are safely landed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of want to take the whole ending from Wen's death onward. Mm-hmm. Wen's not death onward. Mm-hmm. But when I was reading the book, when Wen dies, and we immediately get that next chapter, I guess, from the point of view of Leonard, and just experiencing his heartbreak and destruction in that moment over what he has done. Mm-hmm. I read that chapter, and I'm like, my guy Dave's gonna eat a full meal. Like, Dave Bautista is going to eat up this entire movie.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. And here's the thing, I think Dave Bautista's an incredible performer. I think ever since the first Guardians, he has shown that he is capable of a lot. And I think he's really good in this movie. But I am really bummed we never got an extreme emotional moment with Leonard for him to really eat it up. I just know, I have complete faith in Dave Bautista that he can deliver utterly heartbreaking moments like that. And it's just something we haven't seen him do yet.
Yeah.
And I was really excited to see him do something like that. And I do think, I said this to you yesterday too, I do think getting rid of Wen's death, or an equivalent moment to that, does take away a little bit from the character of Leonard. Without that POV chapter in the book, and kind of the equivalent, like, moment with him in the movie, I feel like you kind of cap what Leonard's characterization can really be.
The question we always ask in this podcast is, which did you enjoy better, and which would you recommend?
See that? Like, every episode, it's leveling different degrees of trickiness for that question. I do think I ever so slightly lean towards the book in this situation. I really did appreciate the deeper thematic weight in the book.
I think I preferred the movie. The book, as I talked about before, was just kind of not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for something a lot more tense and fast-paced. And that's not saying that the movie gives me that. I just think I like what I did get in the movie a little bit better. That being said, I also think you should maybe read the book instead.
Yeah.
I do have some questions, though, for you. So when you read the book, did you believe that Redmond was Bannon?
Yes, I did. I thought he was right. That played into it more for me, because when they start to be like, oh, isn't he the one who told us about the cabin? Mm-hmm. I never believed that Redmond was, like, secretly stalking Andrew and planning his ultimate revenge or anything. I just really did like the aspect of like the what if of it all. I was like, oh, did he actually know they went out of town? Did he pick this cabin for that reason? Kind of thing. It's one of those things where I believe Andrew, but at the same time, there is still that doubt of like, because it has been years. Redmond is much bulkier than O'Bannon was. He has different facial hair. It could be misconstrued. And I like you said, they never do see the ID that Sabrina and Adrian take him on his word instantly. But then you have Sabrina and Adrian like, did we all see the same things?
Right.
I like that element.
Yeah.
But it has just enough doubt both sides. Like I said, the book never chooses a side.
What did you think actually happened after they left in the book?
After they left the cabin? It is the doubt thing. I honestly don't know. And I think I somewhat argue with this mentality a little bit. But I can agree with people who says, well, it doesn't matter what happens after. What happens after doesn't really matter.
I know, but like, what do you think?
Here's the thing. Maybe I'm more of a pessimist.
You think it ended?
I think the world continues.
Oh.
I think it was all for nothing. But Tremblay even says it doesn't matter.
Right. And it doesn't really. If the movie had ended ambiguously, I think I really would have believed that the world had ended. And there's one moment in the movie that makes me believe that above everything else. And it's when Leonard quotes the news as it's going on.
Yeah.
That's hard to
dispute.
Yeah. And that's also, like I said, a turning point in the movie where even Andrew's like, okay, I'm just destroying this TV because it's destroying us, and I can't explain that. In the book, it's hard to say. Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's hard for me to form an opinion on it, probably because it's meant for me to be hard to form an opinion on.
It's meant to be ambiguous, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that the closing of this first episode of To Watch to Read Season 2?
I think so.
Thank you guys for listening to this inaugural episode of Season 2 of To Watch to Read. Maybe Season 1 will become available in some capacity someday, maybe. If you are from the original run, crazy that you're back, welcome back.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know, please. And yeah, are we teasing the next book? Are we just, what are we doing with that now? Thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully this episode wasn't a little bit too messy. Hopefully the audio wasn't too bad. If it was, I apologize.
It'll be better next time.
Trust me, I will be berating myself internally, listening back to this and editing this if it sounds bad. Luckily, Draco, he had no issues with the quality today, and he was mostly silent.
Yes. He did indeed take a nap the entire time.
He did. He really did. Once again, thanks for listening, guys. Okay, bye.
Bye.